session. Thank you for joining early in the morning on Sunday. And I really thank the organizers for putting a platform through the ISN for the early career researchers to do well in their research careers. I would just like to remind everyone that I'm going to check the chat inbox, chat box from time to time for questions if you have any. And also, there has been some power cuts in my area yesterday. And if there is a power cut today, then it takes around 5 minutes for the wireless to come back on. So I just want that as a reminder to everyone. Okay, now I'm just going to share my screen and so today we are going to discuss actually about research funding because there is no sort of prescription to research funding. There is no sort of steps that you can do and you can be awarded a grant. It is mostly experiential, and you build on the awards that you get. You learn from each grant that you lead, and then prepare the next research funding. So what we are going to sort of cover in this session will be funding sources. What are the available funding sources out there? How do we sort of seek out funding actively? How do we approach a funding call? What are the necessary things on a funding call to look out for and build a competitive application? And then how do we approach budgeting? Now, budgeting itself takes, it's a separate workshop for a day, and so I won't be able to give you, go deep into budgeting, but we will discuss about the major sort of budget heads that go into a competitive application and some sort of tips from successful learning. So what I have actually done today is I've studied Professor Vivekanand Jha's CV appropriately, and I want to share that with all of us in terms of the funding he's been able to receive and how he has actually grown his funding career. And that is a good example for all of us, and it's kind of very inspiring to all of us. So if we look at the organizations that Professor Jha has been organizations that have funded Dr. Jha's projects, we'll find that it is basically the ones that are easily available to an Indian researcher. Like there is the Department of Biotechnology grants, Department of Science and Technology, ICMR, Department of Health Research, then the Medical Research Council in UK, Baxter Foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Wellcome Trust, TBT India Alliance, Pfizer Foundation, and also numerous collaborations that he has forged with universities all around the world, which are another source of making good applications and collaborative applications and applying to good foreign organizations for funding. So typically, if you look at his career progression, you will find that as an early career researcher, probably early to mid in 2003, he used to seek the fundings which were easily available, and they were not in huge amounts. Like when he started in 2003, he got an award for 11 lakhs, which was an ICMR grant. And then slowly from that, he built his sort of career to 2020, where he gets funding from national organizations, but in crores. So within that time frame, actually, he did also manage to apply for institutional grant. And in 2006, if you can see that, there is a program grant that he got for PGMR to set the stem cell research unit there. So in between his investigator grants and in between the research that he was planning for himself, he also, wherever there was opportunity, he applied for these institutional grants so that he could build his portfolio as a collaborative researcher as well. And towards 2018, he got an MRC grant from UK as the PI. which is the most sort of sought after and prestigious thing to be a PI on a foreign grant. But I would actually take much inspiration from the fact that he actually tapped into the national funding organizations very well. So that is something that I think as an early career researcher, we all can sort of look into to find out what is available for us out there and then tap that appropriately. He also has international grants as a COI. He has grants from NHMRC Australia in 2017 and 2019, and there are a lot of NHMRC grants that are ongoing as well. So international collaboration is equally important. Now, typically, going by his CV, we can actually put these funding into different buckets, like the government funders, like DBT, TST, ICMR. Then there are the non-government funders, or the bodies, like the UN body, the WHO, World Bank, IDRC, the Wellcome Trust, India Alliance, which is part government and part private Wellcome Trust. Then there are foundations like Infosys, Azim Premji, Baxter, HCL Foundation, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Philanthropy is another area wherein you engage with the funder for over a year or 2 years, and then they give you a sort of lump sum, and there are not too much of monitoring in philanthropic grants, but then it has to serve a purpose which is with the mission of the funder, and also something that you want to establish in your own organization. And philanthropic fund can be infrastructural grants for the institute as well. But for that, you have to engage with the funder for a long time. Then there are commissioned research as well. And what are commissioned research? Here, the funder gives you the particular research question that they want answered. Like if you have seen, many of the UN organizations have a very specific question. If they want you to do a policy research, or if they want you to evaluate a program that they are running, so it will be very specific, but that way you can actually engage with a organization like the UN, so that, and build your portfolio, so that later on they'll just come to you as a very enclosed calls and ask you to sort of do a project for them. And there are, of course, the CSR funding, which is, I think everyone knows now that many of the organizations have CSR funding available. But for this as well, or for the government funding, the non-government funding, even for some of the foundations, you will get active calls on the websites, and they will have deadlines. They will be mostly investigator-led grants. But if you come to philanthropy, if you come to commissioned research and CSR, much of it has to have a very active engagement from your side with the donor organization. So how do I go about seeking funding for George Institute and the institutes that I work for? One is that I register on all the funding websites. Now, all the foreign funding organizations, they actually encourage you to register, and you get a newsletter from them, or whenever there is an announcement of a new grant, you get in your email box, you get that. So that's a good way. But for the national organizations like ICMR, DBT, you'll have to dedicate a part of your time. And I do it every week. I do it for, say, half a day every week. Once a week, I just sit down and I just man all the websites out there of ICMR, DBT, TST, just to find what kind of new announcements they have. NGO Box is also a very good portal in which a lot of grants and funding information is collated, and this also is something that you can see. DevX is another website which pulls in information from different funding organizations and advertises those funding calls. DevX has a subscription though. It is a little kind of steep, but if your institution is giving a sort of a subscription, then I think you should go for it as well. Now, The other good thing about DevX is that it gives you trends in funding about which area will be fundable next year. So you can sort of have something in your mind in terms of strategy. Then there is the DevNet Jobs, which is again an Indian website wherein the India part of DevNet actually houses a lot of calls and announcements. And at one time, I think I used to do this every day because many of the funders who do not send out open calls sometimes put their advertisement on DevNet. Then India Bioscience is another website where much of grant information is there, and India Bioscience actually puts up a lot of funding opportunities in life science and interfaces of life science to, basic life science to clinical and public health research. The other way in which you can seek fund and seek these calls or understand what's available out there is to build your collaborative networks, because many a times your collaborators will write to you and say that this call is out, can we apply together? The last but not the least is to engage actively with funders. So suppose you are doing an ICMR grant and you finished it, don't just stop there. I think it's a good idea to keep your relation with the scientist in charge of that grant, just so that there is an active engagement, because many a times they know that sometimes there are task forces for specific calls, and they can just, if you keep that engagement going, they might reach out to you and ask you, if you're interested to put in an application, and that is a funding sort of source as well. Now, clinical trial grants are a little tricky because they are not as frequently advertised as other public health research grants. But there are special calls from DBT, DST, and ICMR, and once a year at least, there is some call from these organizations on a very specific sort of disease. So the other sort of thing about clinical trials is that it is very specific to a particular disease. So as if the funder or the donor does not have in its mission to sort of address that disease, it will not bring out a call which is more general to other platforms in health. But do keep a lookout for these calls. And DBT BIRAC also announces some calls where academia industry partners in clinical trials is encouraged. Now, a new grant has come out last year from the Wellcome Trust DBT India Alliance, and I think if you're interested in clinical trials, you should check that out. It is to build a clinical research center, and it is more collaborative. They encourage clinicians collaborating with public health researchers, collaborating with basic science researchers, and even non-health research to bring together a unit that will not only address some research questions in clinical and public health research, but also help in capacity building researchers. So there has to be sort of a course planned outline if you're applying for this particular call. Then you should also plan for having like MPH or training clinicians in basic science, that sort of a training program as well with the research program. And there are often some Indo-US calls from NIH, NHMRC, MRC, also European Union. Horizon 2020 is a good funding organization wherein the DBT liaises with the European Union to bring out these calls, and I think you should try and address those and develop applications. The other opportunity how you can sort of seek out clinical trial funding is fellowships. And I think as clinicians, you have more opportunities in fellowship than to target clinical trial grants. Now, DBT, Wellcome Trust India Alliance, is a very good platform, and they have three different kinds of fellowships at an early career stage, at an intermediate stage, and at a senior level. Early career is for a fresh MD. If you want to really begin your research career, you can uh, look at the guidelines that they have. These fellowships are for 5 years, and within that 5 years, they allow you to go abroad for 2 years in a different lab or a different, university. Get mentorship from overseas, and also build your applications and have something complementary to what you're trying to do. And I'll come to that a little later. Um, then there is the NIH K43 Emerging Global Leader Award, which is also a rolling call. It's announced every year, and um, I think the deadline is usually in September or November for this call, and this allows you to actually have two mentors, one in India and one in the US, and you can actually do a part of your work in the US and here also. So this is also a 5-year fellowship, the NIH K43, and they give you 30,000 US dollars every year in those 5 years for your research program. They also cover your salary. So these are some of the prestigious fellowships to have. Then there are the short and the long-term fellowships from DHR, ICMR. And I think you should apply to all these if you're interested to build a clinical trial sort of portfolio and also get training in basic science. And these fellowships actually are applicable even to public health researchers. It's not just clinicians. And of course, there are postdoctoral fellowship. When you have a specific postdoctoral fellowship from a country overseas, where you go and you work on a research question. So I'm going to come to the differences between a fellowship application and a grant application. But before that, I just want to see whether there are any questions. Are there any questions in the chat box? I can't see the chat box.
No, ma'am, none till now. You can go.
Okay. All right. So the difference between the fellowship and the grant application is that the fellowship application is about you. So there will be questions on how will the fellowship help you build your career? How will the research you do now will build your research career path? How will you use this to learn what you don't know, but use it in the future? And who are your mentors? So mentors are very important in all the fellowship application. Now, one thing is this actually needs some sort of strategic thinking, and you have to, if you are a nephrologist and if you want to have a career path in nephrology research, then the fellowship application, not only is it relevant to the research question that you're putting in, but also will want to know how will this fellowship equip you in your research career path. So many a times the Wellcome Trust DBT fellowships are actually, they look favorably if you have a mentorship or have planned to take in a training or build yourself in a complementary sort of field. So suppose you're a nephrologist and you're putting in a research question on nephrology, then you try and see, whether training in biostatistics or training in data analysis or even, data collection and things like that will help you. And so you reach out for a foreign supervisor on that fellowship application, which, will help you gain complementary skills. So at the early career stage, this is what they're looking for. Are you going to gain anything complementary so that it can help you in your research career and build it further? And mentors are another thing that are very important, and usually they, most of the fellowship applications want you to have mentors from other organizations from the one that you are at that present time. This is simply because they don't want any conflict of interest, and they take supervising and mentorship very differently. A supervisor can be a good mentor, and many of my supervisors are very good mentors, but it is also important to have somebody who's not related to our organization, so that you get a very unbiased way, of advice and wisdom, and that actually helps your personal growth as well. Maybe your mentors within the organization will help you grow, in your profession, but personally also you need to develop as a researcher, and so the mentors outside your organization will do that. So I think at an early career stage, it is very important to look for senior members within your own organizations, who can be mentors, and also, mentors outside your organization. And grant application. So the other thing about fellowship application is that much of it is a hypothesis driven question. So they are not looking at whether you are going to get very good results in 5 years. They are going to look at whether you are at a stage to propose a research question, put in methods that will address that research question, whether it is feasible within that time, whether you have those sort of strategies, and sort of develop yourself as a researcher. But in the grant application, it is most important to understand what is the call about, and what is the mission of the funder is also another thing. So just have it in mind, because see, for example, Wellcome Trust does not fund any research which is plant based. So even though if you have a very good idea, at your early career, mid career research, you cannot develop an application around plant research or plant science. You have to develop an application in animal or human research. So go through the mission of the funder, because that is also important. Don't put in an application which is not relating to the mission of the funder. Then is your question in the area of the call guideline? If there are specific calls with objective 1, 2, 3, then you have to put in an application which are going to answer some of the objectives that's out there on the call itself. And are your collaborators complementary to you? So if you are a mental health researcher, and you're a public health researcher in mental health, and don't have a collaborator with the same sort of experience and training as you, they are not going to bring in anything new to the application. Bring in somebody who's complementary to it. Bring in somebody maybe in social science, who can help you analyze the data, frame the questions properly for that survey, and things like that. But collaborator factor is sort of very tricky too. As an early career researcher, it is also important to put in collaborators who have legacy of getting funded from that particular organization. So these are sort of strategies that you can play with. And it's not an ideal world where funders are just awed by your research question. Funding is sort of a very complicated and very sort of strategic thing. So put in collaborators who are more senior, who are in other organizations, have been successful with that particular funding agency, because many a times they review grants for that funding agency. And so sometimes the reviewer who's reviewing the grant can just reach out and say, you're a collaborator on this particular grant. What do you think about it? And even if it's conflicted, that's how things end up. And if the collaborator is going to put up a good word about you, that this person is very promising and that's why I lent my name, that itself goes a long way. So, find somebody who's complementary to you, who's essential to the application, but also put in a senior member in your application. Then is your budget justified? Now, so budget justification is a make and break thing for competitive funding. because if the reviewer wants to say the reviewer has a cap of applications that they can sort of push for funding, then if two grants come to him, two applications come to him, and in one the budget is not justified, and you've just asked for everything on earth because you think that you will never get a grant after this, so you just asked for everything. And in the other, they see that there has been thought put in the budget and how you have justified each and everything that you need, then I think the balance is towards the more justified application, even though the research questions and the technical portion might get the same sort of markings, right? And the other thing they do see in grants is, are you proposing a feasible study in the time frame? So if you have a very ambitious sort of project, and you yourself know that it is not feasible within 5 years, don't put it in. Put it up in objectives which you can do in that 5 years. And many of the funding organizations in India, at least, they are overburdened and overworked. So they'll never come back to you with a good feedback, So it is often through experience that we learn how to sort of master the art of applying to funding organizations like ICMR. And at the end of the day, the reviewers who review also, want very simply to understand what is there in the application. They don't want any complicated jargons. They don't want any sort of paragraphs that are, highlighting a lot of difficult words. So it is important to have the English language plus the science part. So be very particular about grammatically correct and properly, very simple English, but proper with no spelling mistakes, etc., because that really puts the reviewer off. So just think about the reviewer. He's reviewing like 100 or 200 applications within a week. In the Wellcome Trust, when we used to send reviewers review, they used to actually get like 30 applications to review for each scheme that was running. And so if the English is very bad and they really can't understand, it's very complicated, they will just stop right there. They will not try to understand your science. The other thing is, when you have like a 20-page technical portion, try to put in a lot of schematics. Not a lot, but try to put in some schematics which breaks the flow from the word. So don't make it look like it's very sort of wordy, even if it's an ICMR application for that matter. Put in like a little bit of schematics. Then it is a good practice to look at the previously funded projects from that donor organization. So mostly for the national ones, we know what kind of projects have been funded, but if you're applying to a new funding organization, look at the previously funded project and see, firstly, to make sure that what you're proposing is not just being funded last year by them, but also to see, what kind of proposals are they, very clinical trial oriented, or they are mostly funding, socio-economic calls. So that will sort of give you an idea. Are all sections complete in application form? Now, more and more funding organizations are moving to online systems, wherein you have to actually complete all sections, otherwise it will not be submitted at the end. But for the others where till now it's an open call, and till now the format is given by the donor organization and you just have to email someone, be particularly sure that all the application sections are complete. Are your aims connected with your methods, connected with outputs and outcomes? Of course, I think you've had a lot of sessions on how to make good funding application. I think you know that this is very important. And one of the things that you can actually have is that, have a internal reviewer from your own organization who can review that application for you before you submit, because they are the ones, if you can have somebody who's not related to your particular department, like if you're putting in a nephrology application, have some other department read, have some colleague from some other department read it. If they are able to understand it, then I think there is a favorable chance. So peer review before you submit is very important, and it is so important as a research manager. This would be my advice to you. Don't do last minute grants writing. Don't wake up 2 days before the submission and try to put in something unless you already have like a concept note that you can quickly put together. I understand there are strict deadlines, but don't do a rushed job. Because when you get rejected on that application, you shouldn't really feel bad about it, because you didn't put in the time, and it is important to put in time. And then this novelty factor is sort of a little, we all think that we are doing good science, and we all put in research applications where we think that we are finding something new. But suppose you're putting in an application where similar research, and you are actually doing the literature review, and you see that there is a lot of evidence there, suppose in a high income country, then how will it be novel in your own setting? You have to justify that. You have to say that the socioeconomic condition in India is very different from UK where it was tried. Even if it's something which is health systems research, which has been done well in the UK or the US, and you're proposing that in your own research in India, try to bring out why you think that it may, it may go well in the Indian setting. So that will sort of be a little novelty for your own country. And are you proposing a justified budget? I've already gone that. And is the timeline feasible? And are the collaborators you're putting in, are they recipients of good funding from this organization as well? So if you have a collaborator who actually has been successful in getting ICMR grants, and you're putting in an ICMR funding application, then it is probably a good thing. So keep that in mind when you're putting in collaborators. Are there any questions for me?
Ma'am, you want to take the questions now?
Yeah, can I do that before I go into the budget section? How much time?
Yeah. Actually, there is some background noise with your mic. I think some breeze related. That's why some people were saying in the chat. So I'll move ahead with the questions, ma'am.
Yeah, can you just ask me the questions, because I can't really
Yeah, sure. So first question is by Dr. Manish Mali. He wants to know, can a nephrologist get fellowship for his PhD research in nephrology?
So I did look at it, and I didn't find much of PhD fellowships, because most of the funding organizations give you fellowship post your, MD, but not for your PhD studies, especially the Wellcome Trust does not. But there may be, there may be some funding for PhD. You'll have to actually, sometimes Google really works well. Sometimes actually just Google that. I've actually got good results Googling. But I will give you my email ID at the end of this talk. Maybe you can just contact me later on, and we can sort of search through PhD opportunities. Next question.
So the next question, Dr. Gomati wants to ask, is there any upper age limit for the fellowship program, for such fellowship programs?
No, for the Wellcome Trust DBT India Alliance, there are no upper age limit.
Okay. Next question is by Dr. Jacob. Is it possible to do a fellowship while working in a government setup, or do you have to take a sabbatical?
So government setup, I'm not sure. Are you talking about a government institute, or are you talking about a government department?
Say he's part of the department of nephrology in a government medical college.
That's fine. He can do his fellowship within that. See, the thing about fellowship, especially the Wellcome Trust fellowship, is that the host institution has to be very supportive of your fellowship call. So if they allow you to have your fellowship within the host institution, then certainly you can do it.
Okay. So next is, Sorry. So next is actually a comment and a question by Dr. Parag Bavaskar. So he says that he quotes a recent tweet by the principal scientific advisor, and he says that the corporate social responsibility rules were modified last year to support research in publicly funded institutions. So CSR can support organizations working in areas outside the companies. That is the outside the company's normal course of business. So a pharma company could not fund a pharma R&D. So his question now is, can non-pharma companies fund research in government hospital as a part of CSR?
Yes, they can. Of course they can.
Next is Dr. Arpana. She says that she had applied for a CSIR about 2 years back,
Okay.
and the receipt of the grant proposal was confirmed by the CSIR. However,
Okay.
until date, there is no progress or information on the status of my proposal from them. In your experience, what should one do? She has
Well,
apparently mailed them several times, but
yeah.
there has been no reply.
I know we've also faced similar things, and I remember an ICMR grant that we sent in, and this particular research investigator was in a different organization when she had applied for the ICMR grant, and after 3 years she's in another organization, and then she hears back from ICMR and gets that grant. So things like this happen with national funding organization. I think it's good that you have asked them through email. That's all possibly we can do, unless unless there are senior members within your own organization who know people in the CSIR system. Can they sort of put in a word for you? Can the director of your organization sort of write to the CSIR head and ask them what happened? That also helps sometimes. But the good thing about ICMR, and I'm not sure about CSIR though, but the good thing about ICMR is that once they send out an award letter, they do fund it eventually. I mean, if there is sort of a silver lining to that. So the one thing about the previous question on the pharma company giving money to the medical college, I just thought that, sometimes you have to be careful about the conflict of interest as well, because with pharma sort of awards, and I understand that much of the world's clinical trials are funded by pharma companies, but be a little more diligent about conflict of interest. If they are making a diabetes drug, I'm just giving an example, if they're making a drug in diabetes and they want you to do a clinical trial on that, um, just be a little sort of cognizant about whether it is feasible for you, and because the results are going to talk about your organization, which has recommended that this drug is good for diabetes. So those conflict of interest comes in, but if you have a good legal sort of advice from your own organization, it is better. Next question, please.
Yes, ma'am. So the next question by Dr. Sindhura is that can same proposal be submitted to different granting agencies simultaneously?
Not simultaneously, yes. Some of the time the online application, the funding application asks you, are you planning to submit it simultaneously to another organization? Which organization? Which stage is it at? That's okay, but usually it's not a good practice to just send it everywhere. I mean, just I know it's a question of time, but maybe you can do a little bit of tweaking. Maybe you can have part objectives in one and part objectives in the other as well. We have done it that way, just to see whether collectively in our heads we have this entire research program, but can be divided into different objectives and can be sent one part to one and one part to the other. That way, but in a complete sense. I mean, what if you don't get one award? Then how are you going to complete those? So keep it a little more separate, I would say, instead of sending the same thing.
Okay. So the next question by Dr. Sukanya is this: are there any organizations or foundations that would fund research projects carried out in a private hospital?
So, we actually have a lot of sites all over India wherein we sort of collaborate with them. We are also a private organization at the George, and we do collaborate a lot with private hospitals as well. So if sometimes the call itself will say that this call is not open to non-government organizations. This call itself will say that private hospitals or private clinical centers are not allowed as part. But if the eligibility says that non-government organizations and private organizations can apply, then just do what we do generally is to just send an email to the funder, to the particular scientist in charge of that call, and ask them clearly that we are a private hospital, can we just apply to that. But if you say that, then LVPI is a private eye hospital, and they actually have because one of my friend is the grants manager there, and they have a huge portfolio of funding from government and non-government sources. So it is possibly doable. Next question, please.
Um, Actually, Dr. Noble, can actually I was not clear with the question. So his question is the health policy research funding? Ma'am, I think there is a typo. So we can move ahead with the presentation. We'll take that question later.
Okay. All right. I hope I've been able to answer your questions, but if I've not been clear, then maybe you can just email me with your question and I'll sort of have more to think about and respond to them. Paper that came out in Science on how to budget your grant proposal took in a lot of comments from researchers and grants manager worldwide. And these are some of their comments, and maybe I'll just give you a minute to sort of go through them to understand the science of budget. We have 15 minutes more, so I think maybe I'll just hurry down with the other section. So what I like about this is this particular thing, that putting together a budget that is quite detailed shows reviewers that you put in time and effort into your proposal, and it also needs to be in the right ballpark. Right, so this is the gist of getting a good budget. Now, usually the proportions are usually the ones for usual research proposal is that don't keep the manpower or the salary part more than 30-40% of your total sort of budget. And it depends, sometimes you're putting in an implementation science grant in which you will need a lot of workers in the field. So that will be different, that will go up. Sometimes you are putting in an application for, say, numerous sites in the organization in India, numerous sites, and each of the sites will require some sort of manpower. So there the manpower proportion can go up. But generally for a research application, I think it is a good practice to keep the salary or the manpower to 30-40%, and all the rest of it, like your operational costs, should be around 40-50% of that grant, and everything rest can be in the other sections. And also the overheads, try and ask for at least 10% overhead, because in ICMR, they give you 5% overhead, at least for the private organization. Sometimes they give you 2%, which is nothing, but there are organizations which give you 10-20%, and I think you should have a balance of those funding as well, simply because there are a lot of departmental folks in especially private organizations. There is the finance department, there is the admin department, which is going to work with you, and it is good to have that kind of an overhead facility to include other departments as well. And then in your application, you will also be, even the ICMR actually application has a section on, what are the institutional sort of infrastructure and role. And I think it is important to highlight what are the in-kind support that you're getting from the institution, so that when you do ask for the overhead, they are also very sure that you do have some amount of institute support that you're putting in, in that budget. And so they don't just delete much of your budget because you've already told them that the institute is also putting in some amount of resources through these things, which are, if you have an existing statistical team or a data management team, put in that information as well. If you have a central equipment facility from the institute, put in that. We all have senior management and advisory committee to go over the research proposals, mentorship from senior researchers, and free access to collaborators facilities. So these are some things that you can actually add in your application so that they are not incessantly, deleting your budget, because anyway, the institute is supporting you that way. But there are other questions. What if there are no overheads by the funder? I just told you that ICMR gives very little overheads. Then, it's okay. You have to take your prior approval from your senior management or supervisor that there are no overheads. But still, if you have an overhead policy in your organization, but then, be cognizant that you also apply to funding where you can actually incur overheads. What if there are no salaries for PI, and especially private organizations like ours, wherein much of the salary of researchers come from the funded projects? If there are no salaries for PI, are you balancing that out by applying to other organizations wherein your salary is going to be covered? So it's always good to sort of strategically think, about that. And small grants, small budget, there are these extremely small grants, and should you apply for these small grants? Sometimes it is very prestigious, because two of our recent early career researchers got through the Royal Society, with RSTMH, so Royal Society of Tropical Medicine and Hygiene grants, and these are just 4,000 or 5,000 pounds, which is like 4 or 5 lakhs. But it's very competitive process. It looks good on their CV. There are like other awardees from all around the world. So that is a strategic thing for an institute as well as a researcher to apply. Then if you have a very small grant, but when you're writing the proposal, you see that it's a huge budget that you're proposing. So maybe break it up into objectives that you can answer through only this part. Then suppose your grant has been awarded and then you realize that you have forgotten to include a key budget item. What do you do? Now we face these issues as well. And here I think the engagement that you do with the funder actually works. And you'll be surprised that even with ICMR, we've been able to sort of make many of our grants more flexible even after the award. So, you write to them, you justify, you say that, this is important. And since you're cutting down my budget anyway, can at least there is some flexibility in the heads that I'm going to move around. But you need a letter of confirmation from the funding organization, and it is important to keep a sort of written document from them to say that it's fine if you interchange the heads. And the last one also, where you apply for a larger sort of budget and you're awarded only 30 lakhs, and this has happened to us as well. Here we have gone back to them and we have said that we proposed 3 objectives. We can't do 3 objectives in 30 lakhs. We'll do only 2. And that in a very sort of persuasive manner, not like the manner I'm talking about, but in a very persuasive manner, we've been able to negotiate that as well. The other thing is that many of the funding organizations and even the national funding organizations now have sort of a grants manager or a scientist in charge. And I actually found that they're very responsive. So at any stage during the pre-development of the grant or post-development, if you write to them, except perhaps, your experience with the CSIR funding, but I have found that people are responsive. They do respond if you have any queries on your application. I actually wanted to do this sort of a little exercise for all of us, but I don't think we have time. So suppose this isn't just an example. You're proposing an RCT, and one group with placebo and one with drug X for patients hospitalized with a CVD issue. You're planning to recruit 4,000 patients in 40 centers across India, and you want to administer the drug for 3 months. in that particular site setting, and then follow up the patients for 2 years. This is just an example of a research proposal that you might propose, and how to sort of budget for this kind of a proposal. So because we don't have much time, I'm just going to go over the major heads for this kind of a proposal. Manpower, of course, manpower you need. If salaries of PI is applicable, you put in some salary. If salaries of PI is not applicable, then you'll have to put in a senior person in that particular grant who can supervise and manage that grant as well. If you have a departmental statistician and data manager, you can put in some of their time to cover, not the full sort of time, but some of the time, so that they can actually help you with the necessary things. Then you have to put in a research fellow, a research assistant who will also work as a site monitor. And these designations can change depending on which institute you're in. You'll have to put a safety coordinator, then a phlebotomist, during the follow-ups if you're planning to draw blood and things like that. But the thing is, be mindful about the time they will be required on your project. So suppose, except the research fellow and the research assistant who might be needed throughout the 5 years of that particular grant, all the others can be interchanged and they might not be needed on that project. So be mindful that you, just book them or budget them only for that particular time. Then you also have to do a site cost fees. Many of the sites that we work with take a lump sum to cover some salaries and infrastructure of their own. So you have to put that in as well. Then the operational costs, sorry. So operational costs, which are much of the project bulk, will be, cost for the drug and the placebo, logistics of how you're getting the drugs to the centers, to the sites, project IT cost, then site monitoring costs, which are actually travel and subsistence for your own core team of research fellow or research assistant who go to each site and monitor these. And then also the meeting costs. So these are all the operational costs. This will be a head in this particular proposal. Then equipment, if you're planning to buy a -70 or -80 freezer at the end, after when you're following up people and you're drawing blood. Dissemination. Now, dissemination we often think is, just one-off meeting at the end of the project, where we just meet a lot of people and tell them, especially the ones who are our funders, who are government officials, and tell them how our grant fared. But much of dissemination is actually public engagement. Are you going back to your patients and telling them the outcome of your research? That is the true sense of dissemination. And I think you should keep some amount of money for that. And many of the peer-reviewed journals take publication costs. Are you keeping that as well? Overheads and ethics cost in the operational. Actually, I don't know if I mentioned. The operational cost will also have regulatory and ethics meeting approval costs as well. So build that in too. Now, one thing about the timeline I should mention is that when you put in a timeline, and just don't say that I'm going to get the award in March, and this is just an example. I'm going to get the award in 2020 March, and I'm going to start the project March middle. You cannot do that. First 3 months will go in recruiting good people. First 3 months will go in getting all the regulatory stuff sorted out, contracts with different sites, etc. Right? So keep that. If it's a 5-year grant, then keep maybe the first 3 months or 4 months for preparatory work, literature reviews and stuff. So be mindful about the timeline that you are putting in. Sorry, there's some sort of background noise here. I think there's a lot of construction work also going around because now research impact for funder, value for money. Can you all hear me? Sorry,
Yes, we can hear you actually.
Okay. I'm sorry about this background. It doesn't happen like this. Anyway, you know, this is more and more. Many of the funders want to know how is this funding that they are doing is adding value to their work. So there are sections in many of the applications where you have to address these questions. So one way to do that is to highlight the number of peer-reviewed publications that you're aiming at, the conferences you're going to attend, the students which are trained, and these are all coming within research impact, right? New personnel employed, collaborations forged, new funding that will be tried to be obtained at the end of this particular grant, any kind of policy work that you're planning to do, and what is the community or the taxpayer getting back. So this is an essential thing that they want you to address. So think through this when you're looking at research, application. And know this, that ICMR has this extramural funding every year, right? There is a call every year. I think mostly they announce in December of every year and then accept the application in January of the following year. So it is important that, even if you don't wait for the call to come out in December, try to build up a concept note even prior to that. So there are some rolling calls like that every year. So maybe you should try and develop something beforehand instead of, just working on it for a month and then rushing 2 days before the application. Okay, so this is my email ID, and I look forward to your emails. I don't know if I have much time, just 2 minutes. Are there any sort of one question that I can take?
Yeah, so there are about 3 more questions.
Okay, can I take them?
Yeah.
I mean, it's up to.
Yeah, please. Ma'am, if Dr. Sindhura wants to know if the application has a question on whether other funding sources are available, what is the best answer? Does having other funding sources such as intramural funding affect the review?
No, it doesn't really affect. And sometimes it's good to tell them that your institute is also focusing on that. But you just have to be a little truthful there, and you say that, yes, there are intramural, but maybe the budget is not that high, or maybe it has some policy against having collaborators from outside, or maybe you're using it for some other research question that will substantiate this application. So you can sort of go about it that way. But I think it is good to be truthful too, and address it a little more strategically.
Next question is by Dr. Preeta. She wants to know, can you give us a rough ballpark figure for the salaries of different team members when looking at manpower funds?
Manpower funds?
No, she wants to know what are the usual salaries which we have to keep like per manpower fund.
See, there are two categories, right? Wherein you are applying to DBT, ICMR, who have very fixed salaries. So they have fixed salaries, fixed designations, and you can't go beyond that. Even if your own institute is paying more for those designations, you cannot hire beyond a point ICMR and DBT because they have the caps. If they don't have the caps, then the best thing is to do is go by institutional norms. I would certainly encourage that, because go to your HR and ask them what is the sort of the average salary for this person for these many years of experience, and put that because you don't want your new sort of researcher coming into your organization and then quickly realizing that other researchers in their teams, and they do find out, we also find out about our own salaries that way, that they are being underpaid with the same sort of experience. So it's a good practice if you can, wherever applicable, to put in institutional salaries. Go to your HR, they'll give you a range, and then you can just pick up something within that range and work with. But wherever ICMR, DBT and all, they already have an existing cap and you can't go beyond that. So that is your way of justifying to the researcher that you intake as well, that this is an ICMR fellowship or grant, and the salaries are based on ICMR grant. Next question.
Next is Dr. Mugdha. She wants to know that she had applied for a DST grant in May 2020, but there are still no comments from the reviewer. What should be the next plan of action?
If you've not got any answer from the scientist in charge as well, just wait. I'm not sure, but usually, government fundings take time. Usually 6 months is a wait period. And DST actually uploads some, updates on your online site as well about the grant, because it will just show that it's in process or whatever. So if you're not receiving any email from the scientist in charge, I think you should wait. Because of COVID, I think there is a lot of lag in many of the funding organizations this year, and we are also facing that. Many of the awards that were made in January for us in ICMR actually got stalled. And what we got to know from the scientist in charge is that only after this COVID pandemic is in control, that they are going to decide about the awards that have been made, and also the ongoing schemes that are running. So I think just be a little patient, but keep in contact with the funding organization.
She also mentions that this was a COVID related project, but still she has not heard back.
So has the scheme already, is there something on the DST website which says that there have been awards made already in this particular scheme? If not, then it's under review. May, June, July, August, maybe wait till September, but keep writing to this person. And also, if you have senior members in your organization who know people in DST, just ask them to ask these people.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. That's it for the questions. Over to sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Madhuri Datta, for this excellent presentation. Certainly was a learning experience even to me. Thanks a lot. Now, I hope to keep communicating, and I'll pass on your email to all the participants. So if they have any specific personal questions that they want to ask you, they could contact you on your email.